Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Rev Report. I'm your host, Gabe Levi, coming to you live with another entry into our somewhat daily roundup segment. Before I begin, I want to give a quick thank you to Hashem for allowing me to do what I love and to please continue to let me do what I love. And next, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors. Number one, at Precision Writers LLC. You can reach out to them via the website at www.precisionwriters.com or call them at 970-333-9704. And next, SK Jewelers. For all lab-grown diamonds, eternity bands, study rings, and solitaire pendant necklaces, you can reach out to them via WhatsApp at 718-951-0191 to get started. And lastly, Swift Travel Hub. Travel without anxiety, book without fear. Go to bookings at swifttravelhub.com or reach out to them via WhatsApp at 877-340-6727 to get started. All right. The topic that I want to cover today is the Genesis SUV market. So we have the GV60, the GV70, and the GV80. Quickly to recap, Genesis over the last few years, I would say more than the last few years, but within the last 6 years, Genesis has introduced 6-7 years has introduced their completely new lineup. Well, I shouldn't say new. They're totally revamped and tweaked lineup. They introduced the GV80 way back. Then they came within the next 2 years, they introduced the younger, cooler brother of the GV80. They introduced the GV70, which is the quicker, smaller SUV. That's a 5-seater. The GV80 has an option for a third row. Not all the trims do have an option for a third row, only on the higher trims. But the GV80, for all intents and purposes, is the fully sized Genesis SUV. GV70 followed, and then recently Genesis introduced their first ever fully electric SUV, really their first ever fully electric car, the GV60. The common denominator in all these cars and all their SUVs, for me, was that they were lacking something about the comfort was stiff, and there was minimal room in the back for a guy of my size. I am 6 feet tall. There are a lot of people in the world that are my size, and there are a lot of people in the world that are not my size. But for a guy my size, sitting in the back seat of the GV80, GV70, and the GV60 were all brutal. The GV60 was the worst, obviously, because that is the smallest car. The GV70 was also worse than the GV80 because it's smaller than the GV80 and a little more sloped, I should say. The GV80 was bad. It wasn't brutal, but it was pretty rough, given the fact that it's a full row SUV, and I did not expect it. It was pretty disappointing being the GV80. I will say, though, the Genesis did a phenomenal job on all three cars. Beautiful interiors, beautiful exteriors, great infotainment system, great features, solid power. The GV70 has great power. The GV80 also has pretty good power for its size. The GV60 is not a power-hungry EV, but it does have okay power, decent power. It's not meant to be a sporty SUV. It's meant to be a borderline luxury SUV. So it's okay. I'm going to give Genesis the pass on that. But in general, they did a phenomenal job on their SUVs. Already across the lineup, Genesis has done a phenomenal job on their revamping of the G70, the GV80, the GV90, the G80. Sorry, I said G870, G80, and the G90. But it's tough because these cars are really, they're beautiful cars. Gorgeous. I'm going to focus on the SUV specifically on this segment. The SUVs are beautiful cars. Let me show you guys a picture of, let me start with the GV80. I'll go from the top down. The GV80, here we go. The GV80, just look at that. It looks like a Bentley. Looks like a Bentley from the rear, from the side and the rear. Interior also looks beautiful with a beautiful dual screenage, which you find on most of the Kia Hyundai cars, which are the lower sister companies of Genesis. Beautiful seats, everything. Genesis does a phenomenal job on their interior. They might have the best interior in the luxury car game, for sure. I think Genesis is definitely up there with the nicest interiors in the game. Lexus is up there as well. I think Acura definitely is slacking. Volvo is also slacking a little bit. Mercedes is not a fan of Mercedes. Audi is also very sporty. But in general, Genesis does a phenomenal job with their interiors. Definitely on the top, definitely on the higher end of their class, in my opinion. Just based, not necessarily the higher end of material wise, but looks wise, Genesis aesthetically, the Genesis interior is one of the best, if not the best, in the car market, in the luxury car market, in the entire market in general. Genesis, you do a phenomenal job. Now, exterior, like I said, looks like a Bentley. That's a rear view of the car. And the front view, where's the front view? The grille. One second. Look at that. Looks like an Aston Martin and a Bentley. Hands down. When this car first came out, I thought it was a Bentley. Now I'm making that mistake with Buick Vistas and Buick Enclaves. So I guess it's not really such high praise now, but Genesis, in general, the GV80 is a phenomenal looking car. Really, and power-wise, this car is solid power for its size, decently priced, nothing crazy. That's it. It's a solid car overall. That's the GV80. The issue with this car that I had with this car was the fact that when you got into the seat, there was something stiff about the front seat. The materials in the cabin didn't, specifically the shifter and the dial for the infotainment system, did not feel premium at all. Felt extremely junky. Other materials in the cabin were junky, and I thought that was lacking from a luxury car. From a luxury car standpoint, I thought that Genesis definitely should have done a better job giving some more premium materials in the cabin. I felt more in a luxury car. I felt like I was in more of a luxury car when I sat in the Toyota Crown and the Toyota Crown Signia than when I sat in the Genesis GV80. Also, that car was much more comfortable than the GV80. Now, moving on to the GV70. So the main problem, we'll call a spade. The main problem with the GV80 was the fact that the seats were a little stiff. To write it out, the seats were a little stiff. In the rear seats also, there was not a lot of space for me at all, which was really surprising for a car of this size. Very, very surprising. Not a lot of headroom, not a lot of legroom. And the materials in the cabin I thought could have been starkly improved. Now, that's the GV80. Moving to the GV70, which is the younger, cooler brother of the GV80. Also a great exterior design by Genesis, giving this one also somewhat of a Bentley look and an Aston Martin look. I say more of an Aston Martin look, much more sporty than the GV80. You have the sloped back over here with a nicer rear window, I guess you could say, with a somewhat of a cooler design on the front end. Moving to the side profile, that is not a side profile. Where is it? Rear end over here as well. Much sportier than the GV80 in all areas, I think. Interior wise, the GV70 does take somewhat of a step back from the GV80. That makes sense because it is the lower SUV, but still, it's an absolutely stunning interior. This is the new Genesis. Well, this interior and the GV80 interior are both the new Genesis interior. You have the very big screens, beautiful dials, beautiful steering wheel. Just gorgeous. This car, amazing, phenomenally done, especially with this color with the red leather. Phenomenal job by Genesis on the interior on all their cars except the G70, but every car. And the GV70 is no different. This car is an absolutely stunning piece. However, the same problem as the GV80. The front seat was stiff. Something about it was hard. The materials in the cabin, especially the shifter and the infotainment system knob, felt cheap, felt junky. Other dials felt junky around the front of the cabin. And the second row seat was extremely uncomfortable for me. Was the seat comfortable? Yeah, the seat was comfortable, but the sit there was brutal. No legroom, minimal headroom. I really wish Genesis gave me some more space. This is a luxury SUV. Just give me something more. Luxury SUVs aren't only meant to be nice. They're meant nicer than the regular SUVs. They're also meant to maybe give me a little more space, make the ride a little more enjoyable. Give me something more. I think that's something that a lot of the manufacturers or luxury car manufacturers are missing the boat on, where they think that they could just, not that they think, but you produce a car that's a luxury car. You give it a luxury brand, and you give it a luxury nameplate. You throw in leather seats. You throw in this feature. You throw in that feature. Heated, quilted, whatever you want to throw in. But when you step into the car, they're smaller than a regular car. Why would someone who cares about backseat comfort buy a Genesis over buying, let's say, a RAV4? When I sit in a RAV4, I'm much more comfortable than when I sit in the GV70 or a Rogue. Why would I buy a GV70 when a Nissan Rogue is much more comfortable for me. When the seats are more comfortable, when the rear legroom is more, when there's better headroom, when the materials in the cabin feel better. Well, I'm not saying they do on a Nissan Rogue, because a Rogue does feel really junky, but there has to be something more that a luxury car there is something more that having a luxury nameplate brings to the table that I think Genesis is missing out here. You need to give me a bigger reason to step into the backseat of a Genesis. Give me something compelling to go ahead and buy a Genesis. The power is great. That is something compelling over a regular car. But when I sit in it, it's hard. It's stiff. It feels junky. There's just something missing about the GV70 and the GV80 that other luxury competitors have. That when you go into an Acura, you have. When you go into a Lexus, you feel it. Things that are small, subtle, but make a massive impact. The GV60 is the same exact, if not worse. The GV60 definitely felt the junkiest out of all of the SUVs, all three of the SUVs, which makes sense because it is the lowest of the SUVs. And we went through this. I'm not going to show a picture because we went through this on a previous podcast. But the GV60 does look nice. It's not a bad look. It's not the greatest look. The GV70 and GV80 are definitely much nicer than the GV60. The GV60 has more of a Beetle style look, fully electric, okay power. But again, the same issue, the same pros really. Beautiful car, beautiful interior, beautiful. Very well done on the interior by Genesis. Again, Genesis, I think, might have one of the best, if not the nicest interiors aesthetically on the entire car market in general, especially the luxury car segment. However, seats were uncomfortable. Something about them were stiff. And the materials in the cabin felt junky. And the legroom in the back was terrible. Terrible. But I guess you could be expected. It's expected when you have such a small car, but I was kind of hoping that since it's a luxury car. Again, when you think of a luxury car, you think something that's more comfortable, something that's more practical, something that gives you more bang for your buck, something you think of a car that really compels people to pay more for. But the GV60, really all these SUVs, this GV60, the GV70, the GV80, there's nothing about them objectively that's pulling me towards them, aside from the fact that they are extremely aesthetically pleasing. So in general, I really hope that Genesis decides to maybe switch something up with the materials in the cabin, throw in a little more premium materials, move itself from just an entry-level luxury manufacturer to more of a mid-level. Make themselves a little more competitive, I think, in the luxury car market, giving themselves some more materials, giving them some more space, maybe spacing the seats out a little more, maybe making the roof higher to give us more headroom. Small, subtle things that I think Genesis can do to really make their cars continue to soar and to really not even reestablish, but bring the boom to the SUV market, to the luxury SUV segment. We will continue on a similar topic tomorrow, Mr. Shem. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening, or both. You could do both. You don't have to do one or the other. Have a wonderful night.